We are back for episode 41 of Kane's Local. We are going to be just the two of us today. It is just me and the old man. We are going to be talking Kane's hockey, breaking down a little bit of the game last night, talking over some of the injury woes for Carolina. Uh, Apparently, Seth Jarvis got a new racing machine, so we'll be talking about that as well too. And then we will go over our three stars of the week and a little bit more as well too. But first off, we're going to dive right into last night's game. Carolina gets a big 4-0 win over Ottawa, and it should have probably been 6-0, I think. There were a couple times where we probably could have scored a couple extra goals, and then, to be fair, going the other way, it could have easily been 4-4. I think
Mhm.
Spenser Martin had an unbelievable game. I'll pass it over to you, Dad. What did you see from last night's game that you like? What did you see that was a little bit worrisome, if there was anything?
I don't think I didn't really see anything too worrisome, quite honestly. I mean, we did sort of when we got up a couple goals, I thought, they had to push back but at the end of the day, the worrisome thing for me was heading into the game was, which Spencer Martin are we going to get? Because I mean, he's had really good games for us in the past, and then he's had some real turds too. So, yeah, it was just that was the most worrisome thing for me. But but overall, the guy's energy, the tempo, the swagger of the team, and really, and quite honestly, the swagger of Spencer Martin. I mean, I'm not sure if you caught all the game, but the two saves that he made, one at the
Hmm.
end of the second period, he made that on Shane Pinto coming in, and basically before the clock even ran out, he dropped the mic and
Yep.
he was heading to the locker room. It was awesome. It was so cool. And then at the end of the game
He
against
throws the
against
puck
Kachuk,
back at him.
I mean, point blank, he just kind of looks up, and if you look at the replay, he looks
Oh,
at him
yeah,
and
he
then
throws
flips
it
the
straight
puck.
at him. It was great.
He's like, just try it again, try it again. But that's what you need as a goaltender is that swagger, that confidence, and I think Kachuk's one of those players that he can get in your head because that's what he does. I mean, and he's so good at it, and I respect him for that. I mean, I don't blame him for doing it. I mean, I do it too. You got to get in you got to get in their house, and he didn't let him in, and it showed. He made some saves, one off his forehead. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah,
He
there
was
was
everywhere.
I think it was
Um,
early into the third period, he made a collarbone save where he came across and I don't know how he elevated high enough, but it hit right off the shoulder, went out of play. I mean, it was a very good showing from Spencer Martin, and we do need to give him his flowers. After 60 career games played, that is his first career NHL shutout, so
mhm.
big hats off to Spencer
Mhm.
Martin. I know it was brought up on the feed. I know you weren't able to watch the feed being in person at the arena. But Tripp had brought up that he was either a dinner or lunch, can't remember exactly where it was, but he'd overheard some Canes fans talking about the fact, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to win games with Spencer Martin in net. Hey, I made a very good text, I think, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it up and read it out because now granted, he's still got to play good, and we'll talk about who we think should be playing in today's game against St. Louis.
Mhm.
But I do want to read off this text that I had put out into our group chat earlier this week when we found out that Kochetkov was going to be out for at least a game or two. I said Spencer Martin will settle in and play a lot like Mrazek. He's not going to be lights out in numbers, or he's not going to be light. He's not going to light numbers up in regards to goals against save percentage, but will also be able to steal you a game. If we play well around him, he can be a very functional goaltender. Plus, I don't think Kochetkov will be out long term. He was still trying to play last night, but I told you he'd steal you a game every once in a while. I
Mhm.
knew it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think he played exceptionally well, and I really do think the guys in front of him played hit really, really well. I mean, nothing against his game. I thought defensively we were as good as we've been in a while as a core group of six. Um, you know, Gossesbear had a better game. Orloff had a better game. I think that he's had games where he's struggled here recently. Maybe it's a little bit of speed issue, and he's a little bit hurt. But I thought top to bottom, and there was some plays that I mean, we jumped on early on in the season, Brett Burns, and he's getting older,
He's
this, that,
played
and the
really
other. But
well this
man,
year.
he played exceptionally well last night. Jacob Slavin, The thing about what young defensemen need to look at with a guy like Jacob Slavin, we always say he's one of the best defensemen, if not the best defensive defenseman in the league. But he made a I wouldn't say it was a mistake last night, but he stumbled on a transition, lost his footing, and was able to recover all in one motion and create a turnover and transition the other way. If he didn't recover, it was a breakaway. So those are the things that when you look at a player, and I'm with you. I think we've said it at nauseum that there needs to be another award other than the Norris Trophy. The Norris Trophy should be for the best defensive
Make the
defenseman,
Bobby Orr Award for
and there should be Bobby
the
Orr
best
Award or whatever. Call it.
offensive defenseman.
You know, they do it for
Hmm.
forwards. Why not do it for
Yeah.
defensemen? I mean, give them their props because bar none, I don't think there's a better defensive defenseman in the NHL than Jacob Slavin. So, and last night was a great example. I mean, Ottawa's
Yeah.
they're not a bad team. They got a
They're one
ton
of
of skill.
they're one of the premier offensive teams in the league this year. Their big problem's been
Yeah.
keeping the puck out of the net, and so, I mean, to
Yep.
hold the team that's been firing on all cylinders offensively like Ottawa has to no goals, hats off to the Canes as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. I mean, as a whole team effort. I still,
Mm-hmm.
again, I want to give props to Spenser Martin because I think the team gave him a chance to make a shutout or to get a shutout. He put him over the top to get it. You know, he was the difference maker in the
Mm-hmm.
aspect of getting that. I think we still would have won the game with just how we played top to bottom. But when he needed to make a big save, he made a big save. I mean, he had a couple where there was one, I
Yeah.
forget, Martin pushed, maybe it was Norris into him, and he still is able to come across and
Mm-hmm.
get the glove up while having a guy literally sitting in his
Mm-hmm.
lap. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, exceptional performance by the whole team all around, but Martin made the saves when he needed to
Mm-hmm.
make them. That's all you can ask from a goaltender, especially because
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we looked at him in the Colorado game. It felt like he couldn't save anything in that game, but also we look at the opportunities that we gave up to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot better
Yeah.
opportunities that
Yeah.
we gave up to Colorado than we gave up
Oh
to
yeah.
Ottawa.
Oh
So
yeah.
when
Oh,
the
no
team,
doubt. But the other guy too, I don't want to, maybe we'll jump off him for a second, but we pumped his tires up a little bit. But I think overall, really glad to see Aho
yep.
score in regulation and not an empty net goal. I think that's going to do, we're going to see the benefit of that
And
going forward.
you had
Because
told
it's,
me earlier in the week that you felt like he was missing a step or missing some speed. Maybe he was injured, maybe something along those lines. And I think that since you said that every game he's gotten progressively a little bit faster and a little bit more comfortable,
yeah.
and I think that
Mm-hmm.
if he continues to add, and that's the bigger thing with him, it's not about that's the end all be all. You just have to keep adding week over week to the game, and it's going to you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get it back. It's just a confidence issue for him right now, and I agree with you 100%. I think getting the monkey off the back and putting one in that's a 5-on-5 goalie in the net type of goal. It's going to be huge for him, and he's just been a touch snake bitten. The other player I want to make
Yeah.
note of too, because I think that whole line, while producing a lot of points, has been struggling. I think Svechnikov had a really good game last night too. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
very dominant when he needed to be dominant. He was physical when he needed to be physical, and he didn't make as many. Now he still had some, but didn't make as many of those just blind passes into no man's land. It was a lot more
Mm-hmm.
controlled in his
Yep.
game, and when he's playing controlled, he can take over games. He's that good. But it's just with him, it's a
Mm-hmm.
consistency thing at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think his problem is that he plays the puck a little too soft when he's trying to make a play. But he's more of a it's funny because he's a finesse player when it
He's a
comes to the
finesse power
puck.
forward.
But he's like a monster when
Mhm.
it comes to the physical side of the game. So if somehow he could bridge that a little bit and put a little bit more grit into and or strength into the finesse side of his game to get the pucks there quicker, I think man. I tell you what, the sky's
And
the limit for him. And I do agree. I think he was physical last night. He was all over the place. They had their chances. They had opportunities. I mean, Roslovic right by the side of the net. There was all kinds of opportunities, and and I didn't realize until actually the second period that till they started second that Olmark wasn't even
Oh
playing. It was Forsberg.
yeah.
So I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I mean, why are you playing Forsberg? Maybe they
Well,
played the night
to be
before.
fair
I don't
to
recall.
be
I don't
fair
think
to
they
both
did,
of
but
them, I think Forsberg's got the better numbers. Yeah, I
he's
was gonna
probably
say I
has
think
better
Forsberg's got
numbers. He
better
has better
numbers right now.
numbers.
And plus, Anton Forsberg,
Yeah.
if I do recall, beat us 2 times last year out of the 3 times we played them. So when he's
Mm-hmm.
on and he's playing, it's the Alex Nedeljkovic. Now I think we've kind of conquered all those monsters this year. We seem to be able to put pucks in at nauseum now, to
Yeah.
steal your phrasing there, Dad. But whenever we used to play Ned, it was like, oh man, he might get a shutout just because whenever he plays against Carolina, he always has a good. It was
Mm-hmm.
Anton Forsberg was very much similar. Whenever he came in to play
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, he always seemed to just. It would be a real tight game. It was never an easy one. And even last night, I mean, I don't think he made it easy on Carolina by any stretch, but um,
No, he didn't, and it really
yeah,
was a tight game. It was a tight game, and like you said, I think earlier, it could have easily gone four
I do
four.
want to, and to give Ottawa
So
fans their credit, I think the officiating last night was probably some of the poorer officiating I've seen all season. There were, I mean, Orlov in the
yeah.
first period called for a hook. The stick wasn't even close to a hook. He hit him from. Granted, he gave him a
Yeah,
little
I know.
forearm shiver in the back, but it was not a hook by any stretch of the imagination. The
Yeah.
too many men on the ice call,
Yeah.
a touch soft. I'll give him that. Granted, the guy was at the hash marks when the other guy jumped on, so it was a little bit like, yeah, it definitely was a penalty. But when you're already
Mm-hmm.
down a man,
I mean, but you're
you're
also,
already
yeah, you're
down
down
a
a
man.
man, and it was only a 1-0 game though, so it wasn't like it was a 3-0 game
Fair.
at
That
that
is
point.
fair to
So
that point. But there was also, I think,
yeah.
the interference call on Stützle before they scored. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we'll take those. Svetch has gotten called for a couple
Yeah.
this year that have been just god awful, so he's earned it. But that was not a penalty. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, but he did whack the
Yes,
stick out of his hand. I mean, before he actually got to the puck. So I mean, if they're officiating consistently bad throughout the game if they're going to call that too many men, then they're going to call that one too. I mean, because it is
yes,
interference. I
but
mean, there's no way, or it could be interference, could be
the
slashing, could be
the thing
whatever.
that pisses
So,
me off with this rule is I think the slashing calls have become too soft. Or even the
hmm
if you have one hand on your stick and you're reaching like Svetch's, that was not egregious contact on the stick. I mean, that's more of a like if Svetch had 2 hands on his stick and he whacks down to try and move his stick out of the way, Svetch isn't dropping the stick. And so I don't think there's a penalty. But because he's reaching with one hand like this, reaching out on the stick, it just something about it to me. I'm like,
hmm
I would be the same way Stützle was. Is like, there's no chance. There's no chance you're calling that penalty. Like, I'd be pissed as
hmm
well too. But we've seen it a couple times again on Carolina, so we'll take them.
Hey, you know what? We've been on the bad end of a lot of five on
That's what I'm
threes here
saying.
lately.
I'll
So
take it.
I'll take one every
Yeah.
once in a while. So, I mean, I think even Roddy said it in the post game. He just kind of chuckled. He said, "Well, I said it's about time we got one." I said because we've had so many against us here in the last
Yeah.
8 to 10 games. It's probably more than any team's probably had all season
Yeah.
in a normal season that we've had in the first
I
15
think we've
games
had
of this
4 or
season. So.
5 on threes, and I think last year we might have only
Yeah,
had 4 or 5 on threes.
yeah. So, but the best part about that though is up until last night's game, the power play's been
Mhm.
struggling a little bit. It hadn't had a lot of momentum, and for them to understand from the first power play unit to elevate and execute to take advantage of the 5-on-3 quickly, and to still have
And
another
then to
power
score
play,
off that power play
that
too.
was
Yep.
that was brilliant. And that's the other guy I wanted to mention. I I know we're on his bandwagon, but I tell you what,
He's
Jackson Blake
ridiculous.
is the
He's
real
ridiculous.
deal. I'm telling you, he has got so much skill. He works his bag off, and that fourth line, I would put that fourth line up against almost anybody
I'd
in
put
the
it up
league,
against
and they would
a
help
lot of teams'
contain him.
second line, to be fair.
Oh, me too. Yeah, and me too. That's what I'm saying. Again, I would say they would challenge some of the most elite lines in the NHL. They would give them a really,
Yep.
really hard time. And I think they may not be productive against them, but they
Yep.
would shut them
The,
down. They're like a
yeah.
second, third line. They're
One
second
one
shutdown
hundred
line.
percent. The thing is I think we're only seeing the beginning of Jackson Blake because he told
Hmm.
Tripp in the Seattle game that was the first game he actually felt comfortable. He had 7 shots that game. He was I think the only player on the ice that looked relatively good in that Seattle
Hmm.
game. I mean, he was flying all over the ice, and I think we're only seeing the beginning of this. And I think that if he gets more ice time, which I think he's honestly earned at this point, oh man,
Hmm.
he could easily be up there for rookie of the year. I mean, he could be in the running very quickly.
He should be.
He wasn't even
He
in the
should
top
be.
10 last
And I
week. So
think I know, I know. I think it was a shocker to me, but I think, I mean, having Jarvis out of the lineup is tough. But when you got a guy to backfill
it's like a
the
one
power
for one
play
swap
bumper
out
spot
the
like him, I mean, it's two small,
gritty guys
right-handed
too.
shot, gritty guys, and I think, Blake is just coming into his own, and if he continues to grow and develop, and he's so shifty. I mean, I didn't realize how quick he was in and out of traffic. I was watching him last night. I said, "There's no freaking way he's coming out of there.
You know who he
There's no
reminds me a
way."
lot of, and he's another rookie, which it's definitely an older rookie, but he's still up for the Calder, is Stankoven out of Dallas.
Hmm.
They're not big by any stretch. Stankoven is only 5'8", but they are
Yeah.
so shifty in and out of traffic, and Blake,
Hmm.
yes, he still has some learning to do in his game, 100%. There's too many times where he's getting caught in the middle with getting hit a little harder than I probably would prefer him getting hit. There's been 1 or 2 times where I'm like, "Ooh, that's a tough one,"
Yeah.
but I think that's just gonna come with a little bit of time, but that's the beautiful thing that Stankoven does. I don't think I've watched quite a few Dallas games. I don't think I've ever seen him really put himself into a situation where he's gonna get blown up, and yet he has the puck on his stick probably more than anybody else on that line. He just is so shifty, so
Yeah.
dynamic, and I think Blake's gonna get there. I think there's still a little bit of a learning curve for him. He is a touch younger. I think Stankoven's 22 at this point. Touch younger, hasn't played as many years pro. But I 100% agree with you. I think we're only seeing the beginning of Jackson Blake, and I wouldn't be
Yep.
surprised if he's in the top 3 for Calder voting at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's, somewhere in the top 6 in our lineup by the second half of the
I think
season
by
heading into
almost by
playoffs. I think.
Thanksgiving, if he keeps going the way he's
Yeah,
played the
but
past
I
2.
think I think don't yes, I don't wanna push him too fast, but I think he's definitely he's earned
Yeah.
additional ice time. And I think by going on the first power play unit, he's getting that nod from Rod. And he's earned the nod, basically. He's not just being given it. I don't want people to misunderstand that,
Yep.
but he's earned it. And I just there's nothing about his game that I
Now,
don't
I know
like.
we just harped on the fact that the 4th line has been playing exceptionally well, and I think Jackson Blake's a massive factor in that aspect. I wouldn't mind seeing him and Carrier flip-flop, though. For the one
Hmm.
reason of I think Blake would bring what Jarvis brings to that 3rd line, and granted, that 3rd line scored 2
Hmm.
last night, so we can't give them, like, they're not scoring. Martinook's been on a heater lately, but
Yeah.
I think we're a more lethal team when our 3rd line has an offensive threat on it, and I love Carrier's game. I think he's a perfect fit on that 3rd line. I think if we didn't have Martinook on that 3rd line, that's exactly where Carrier would fit in. But we still need a little bit more about offensive presence on that line, I feel like, than we have currently. I don't
Hmm.
think Martinook's gonna stay as red hot as he is lately, but if he does, happy days. We have 2 offensive threats, but I think Blake would fill that Jarvis role if Jarvis is out longer
Yeah.
term.
Yeah. Well, you think about it though. I mean, if they put him on IR, I mean, it's probably not a short
So,
term
they
deal,
put him
quite
on
honestly.
IR because Kochetkov wasn't actually injured, and they needed an extra roster spot for Peretz. So yes, so he's
Oh,
not on
okay.
LTIR, so he's not out 30 days or more. So he's only on IR for the
Okay.
sole reason that we needed an extra roster spot because Kochetkov wasn't actually injured, and we wanted to keep him active in case we
Hmm.
actually wanted to put him in last night. Um,
Yeah, okay. Okay.
yes.
Well, that makes
So
sense.
I read
That makes
into that. I
sense.
was going to bring that up as well too. I've completely forgot about that. But yeah, so Jarvis's IR is literally just a roster spot. It doesn't mean that he's out any
Yeah.
longer. It just means we just needed a roster spot filled up. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm gonna kind of transfer this over to our goaltending situation currently. Wouldn't be surprised if we see Perret's back in Chicago by the afternoon today. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Would you, if I'll pose a question to you,
I think I'm gonna pose the
if
same question to you.
Kochetkov is if Kochetkov is ready to go, do you play him or do you come back with Martin
Yeah,
for a
see,
back
it's
to
it's
back?
really tough to me because back-to-backs are, especially in this day and age in the NHL, are very tough on goaltenders due to the fact of how fast the game is. I think the
Hmm.
reason why we see significantly less of them is because you could easily get away with it during the 2003 up until like the 2013 season because the game was very much a defensive first, slower game. Very they were starting to bring back offense with, the getting rid of the two-line pass rule, getting ri or making it like the hook and grab illegal and all that kind of stuff that was, very prevalent in basically the '90s up until '05 when we had the lockout.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but we don't ever see a true number 1 anymore, and it's because the game is just out and out faster than it is. It's way faster than it was previously. I
Hmm.
think that because of the fact that Kochetkov this is really difficult because I wanna play Kochetkov for the sole purpose of I don't wanna injure Martin, because if we go and all of a sudden Martin has a torn groin and he's out weeks, then we're Kochetkov and Peretz
Yeah.
on the goal, but same issue with Kochetkov is he's coming off of a wear and tear issue where it's
Yeah.
like, if we can give him till Wednesday, that's massive. That's a whole
It's
week off,
huge.
basically.
Yeah. Especially knowing now that Freddie's more long term
Also,
than
we
short
gotta
term.
find a
So
resolution of Freddie Anderson. My goodness. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If it, I don't. Freddie probably never will hear this commentary, but I love Freddie
He's
Anderson's game.
unbelievable when he's
But
in the lineup.
he's got to play. He's got to be able to play, and I hate it for him, and I hate it for us, honestly, because when he's in net, he's
Yeah.
absolutely lights out. But man, you can't be like I said. We've said this from day one. He's a 20 game. He's going to be the league's best backup goaltender. He could go 20-0 as a backup if you just played him
Yeah.
20 games a
We
season. You wouldn't pay him what probably a number one salary, but at the same time, he has the ability to win you games if he's limited on how many games he has to play. His body
we
just
and
can't do it.
I know I harped on this at the start of the year. We should have never done the one-for-one swap with the 2 of them to start the year. It should have been Kochetkov's net where he's playing 75% of the games. Let Freddie play 20 games a season. That's all he needs. That's
Uh-huh.
all Kochetkov, and we've seen it from Kochetkov when he's not as long as he doesn't play like 7 in a row, 8 in a row, he could
Hmm.
play 4 or 5 in a row and not have an issue. Play 4 in a row, let
Sure.
Freddie play. Play 4 in a row, let Freddie play. Play 4 in a row. That's
Yeah.
how the cycle
Yeah.
needs to go. We can't allow Freddie Anderson
Yeah.
to go 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day like, he just doesn't have the gas tank for that, nor can his body keep up, and I think we see this issue with larger goal and he's always had an injury or problem, so I can't just say it's
Hmm.
you know, it's not a
It's
new
not
thing,
new.
but with larger with
Yeah.
taller, bigger goaltenders, we do seem to find that once they do get an injury, Ben Bishop was the same way. When they do get an
Perfect
injury,
example.
it takes them forever to come back, and they never actually come back. It
Hmm.
always seems to be a lingering problem week in, week out. It's
Hmm.
just when you're that big, it takes a long time to heal, and it's just
Yeah. And Matt
yeah,
Murray was
Matt
the same
Murray's
way. I mean, he
6'5".
was the
He
same
never
way. I
could
mean,
stay in the net. I think the only
he
example of a
couldn't.
bigger I mean, even Vasilevsky, he's only 6'3", so technically he's not in that category,
Yeah.
but, like, he's one of the bigger guys that
Yeah.
he seems to be elastic. Um, but,
Yeah.
like
I know. And he's got ligaments and joints that
but to be
normal
fair,
people
he's
don't
been
have.
injured
I mean,
twice 2 or 3 times in the past 5 years, so, like, he also
yeah.
hasn't been able to stay 100%. I mean, he was injured for a good chunk of last year. He had
Yeah.
back surgery. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
let me let me
I don't
pose
know
a
what I
different
would do.
question to
I
you.
mean,
Well, I never actually gave my
yeah.
answer. Me personally, I'm I know I'm going back with Martin. Um, I think that if we have to unfortunately sacrifice a goaltender, that's the one I'm probably going with. I think the team's probably gonna have I hope I'm wrong. I hope everything. I think you're gonna have a little bit of a fast start today, but then it's gonna slow down significantly in the second and the third
Yep.
period. I think there's gonna be an onslaught of shots in the second and third period. If I'm gonna, I hate saying this, but if I'm gonna put one goalie at a little bit more of a risk for that portion of it, I'd rather it be Martin. We can't afford to have Kochetkov out long term. And I love
Yeah.
Spenser Martin.
That
I've been a big advocate of his since day one. Like he is I like him a lot as a goaltender. But if Freddie's out, is he my number two for a full season? Maybe he's the guy. But I think there's still some solution that can be found here. But I think Martin goes today.
yeah. I honestly I would do it as well. Um, and if Kochek for the pure reason that, you know, we obviously want to win, get points. We're doing that as a collective group. We're getting points, but man, do you push Kochekov if it truly is a wear and tear item? I mean, why not give him an extra couple of
I'd rather
days?
have
I
him healthy
mean,
for the
tell the
Metro games
boys,
too. Yeah.
me too. Give him those points are swing points, and this one, not that it doesn't mean anything, but it's not as these 2 points aren't necessarily as critical
Hmm.
as 4 points in the Metro. So, so I mean, I think I would go with him. I would leave Kochekov in the press box, or I'd start Peretz and say, kind of he's on a short leash. And I mean, you hate to throw a kid into that level of experience, but hey, you got to do it sometime. And is he or is he not ready? I don't know. I mean, he's played well in the American League, but the American League is the American League. It's
Yeah,
not the
and it's not like
NHL.
he's
So
lit up numbers in the American League. I think he's got a below
no.
900 save percentage. Granted, he's played 3 games. I think he's 1 and 2. Um, but I wouldn't. That's not my solution. I wouldn't throw Peretz in. I don't think that that's the answer. I think it's probably, in all honesty, if I'm Rod and I'm making the call, I'm putting Martin in and I'm putting Kochetkov on the bench. And it's kind of one of those things that it's like, hey, he's still probably going to rest for a good chunk of it. He gets a little bit more shots and warm-ups. He's already been practicing with the team, so it's not like he's not skating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then if the game starts to slip a little bit and we feel like we need the points, we have the option. But I think
Yeah.
I need to see more out of Pretz in the AHL. Just even, I mean, maybe the numbers will never get there. Maybe he's not, an NHL level goaltender, but to even just kind of get that game, I think he needs to see more rubber in the AHL first, just to kind of build the
Yeah.
confidence up a little bit in that regard. Um,
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think I'd put Martin in, to be honest, and just run it. Kind of think I don't remember the last time anybody's done that. They've actually come back with the same
well, in less
goaltender on
than
back to back. I mean,
in
it's
less
good
than
as
24 hours.
in
Yeah.
less than
Yeah.
24 hours.
I know Tampa
So
I mean,
you know,
when Vasilevsky's healthy, they will play him in back-to-backs. Typically not, I think, on the less than 24-hour games, but, I know I have
hmm
seen Vasilevsky in back-to-backs before, so he's
and then St. Louis
yes,
played yesterday too,
yeah, they
right? They
beat the
played up in
Bruins, but
Boston.
they played at 1 o'clock yesterday. Granted, they also had
Okay.
travel too. It's I don't that's the other you know what? Maybe I'll take my point back from earlier. It's gonna be a very even game in the regard I mean, St. Louis playing 1 o'clock yesterday, travel day.
Yes.
Granted, they probably got into Carolina before the game even started. So, it's like they definitely
hmm
have more rest than Carolina does, but when you're also factoring the travel aspect of it too, that makes it a little bit more
hmm
challenging. They're also sleeping in a hotel, that makes it a little bit more challenging. There's a couple things. So, I think it's gonna be a good game. I forgot St. Louis played yesterday. Um,
Yeah, well, they went to
a little
overtime
bit
too.
long.
So or the shootout. It was
No, it
overtime
was
or
OT.
shootout.
They won an OT. I do remember that where we had
Yeah.
an unhappy camper in this household, after that game.
I
Yeah.
I don't doubt it. So we're gonna see that we're gonna see the looks like Bennington played yesterday, so we're gonna see the guy that stoned
Hoffer.
us in
Uh,
St. Louis.
yeah.
Hoffer. Yeah, so he'll get the looks like he'll get the
What
nod. let's see who they got listed here. Oh, they got Kochekov
Yeah,
listed as a
like I
starter.
said, I'm very hesitant in playing him. Now granted, if it were up to Kochetkov, he'd be playing. He would have played last night too.
Mhm.
Kochetkov doesn't ever want to be out of
Yeah,
the
I
net.
know.
He'd have played last night, he'd play tonight, he'd play Wednesday, he'd play Thursday. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the big thing, and we'll leave the goaltending on this point. I think Spenser Martin has changed a little, or maybe not all, but definitely some of the Carolina Hurricanes fans' perspective after last night's performance. I think that everybody sees him maybe as a little bit of a different goaltender because I think the team rallied around him, and when you can build trust from the net out in how the team's playing, the team's
Mhm.
gonna play better overall. We all know that. You play different in front of different goalies. There's a different vibe in the
Mhm.
team when you're playing in front of a different goaltender, and when you can get a goalie that gets a shutout behind you and making some really good saves at that point as well too,
Yeah.
puts a world of confidence in the netminder, and you kinda can play a little bit
Yep.
more relaxed in front of them.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we'll leave it there. I mean, you've played in front of various goaltenders in your career, and as have I, and you do play differently in front of certain guys that you feel more confident in, and
Yep.
it's just natural. You know they're going to make the save. You know they're gonna be there to backstop it if you screw up, and and don't get me wrong, we all screw up and make a bad play, and but when you have that confidence,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a
for
good
sure. I
feeling.
remember playing in front of a, specific goaltender named Britt League, who arguably probably the best goalie I've probably right there is probably the best goalie I ever actually got to play with. I mean, I had a goalie in college, Kurt Gutting. He was ridiculous as well too, but definitely Britt was probably I mean, he went off to play in the USHL for a little bit. Like, I think his issue was always a little bit of the mental side of the game versus the actual, but, like, as a
Hmm.
goaltender, probably one of the best I've ever seen. I had a turnover in a CompuWare game. I threw it right up the middle because I was trying to hit the guy breaking crossing. Pizza right up the middle, and Britt's coming from the post, comes out, throws the blocker up because the guy basically one-timed my pass and throws I is the great one of the greatest saves I've ever seen. I was like, "How do you" but you make a bonehead play, you have a goalie that's there to bail you out. We end up winning that game 7-2 or
Hmm.
something like that. I ended up that was one of the games that year I had multi goals. I had like 2 goals and an assist in that game, and that was where the meat and potatoes line came up for Colin Muldoon. But you play different in front of different goalies, 100%. I totally agree with that. Now, we'll move right along. Seth Jarvis, he was driving around a Volkswagen with a cracked windshield for a long time, and then something happened this offseason that, probably changed how he looks at money a little bit. He got a nice little contract boost compared to where he was. He went off and bought himself an R8 according to, the Twitter universe. So, don't I mean, how much are we believe in the X universe? I tend to believe them a little bit more, but if Jarvis bought an R8, please God, drive it carefully.
Yeah, because every time you watch on the jumbotron at the rink, they're talking about who's a good driver, who's this or who's that, and basically Jarvie is always at
Huh,
the bottom of the list.
there was a s
You know, he's
there
just like just never he never
there's
gets out
a
of his own way. He's according to them,
yeah,
he's a
there's a
terrible
story from
driver.
32 Thoughts with, oh, who's the guy that runs 32 Thoughts? He's the big, like, Elliot Friedman. So he had Jarvis on for a one-on-one interview, and it was 2 years ago in playoffs. He got, like, given a car from a dealership as, like, basically a promotional deal. It was a Dodge Hellcat. And so apparently, one day after practice, Rod's walking out the door and Jarvis is leaving. And that little strip from the player's entrance to the end lot?
Yeah, yeah.
According to Rod, he took off like a bat out of hell going up that little strip. And the next day, when he's coming into to practice, he goes, Jarvis, what are you fucking Lewis Hamilton? Like, what are you doing? You're absolutely flying up the road. But now he's got an R8 that's got a V10. Now, granted, that the Hellcat can make a lot of horsepower, but those R8s, they're
Yeah.
light as well too. Please drive it carefully, Seth Jarvis. Please
Yeah,
be
please
safe.
be safe. We need you. we need you in the lineup. I get it's cool, and I guess he's staying in the Volkswagen
Yeah,
family because he's at
he's
our
got the
age.
he's got
So
the upgraded bug.
he's got the upgrade. Yeah,
It's
it
a
is. It's
VW
basically an
bug with a
upgraded,
little bit of a
much
longer
more
back end
powerful
and a
bug. Yeah,
V10. Yeah, it's just got a
yeah,
hell of a lot more power.
yeah. So yeah. Well, I hope he's not out for
No,
long
yeah,
term because we
yeah.
definitely need him. So, but hey, good on him. He got paid
It's off his good play.
and he
He's
started.
earned every second of
Yeah,
that, and he's earned that
earned
contract.
every bit of it.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had a Celsius and a coffee, and I'm getting awfully jittery right now. So bear with me for a second. My brain's going a little loose. Like, holy smokes! I'm seeing two of my sheets right now. I was
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
know.
maybe I've touched too much caffeine this morning. We are going to pivot on over to a couple players we think that are overachieving this year, and we'll touch on maybe some players that we think are also underachieving if we do have any. I have a couple in mind that I think we definitely should be seeing more out of.
Hmm.
Granted, hockey's a games of ebbs and flow. Sometimes you are on an absolute heater. Sometimes you're on the coldest streak of your life. It's all about finding that middle ground again. Because when you're on a heater and you're really high, the fall is very big sometimes, and vice versa.
Yeah.
When you're in a very cold streak, if you can find that middle ground, all of a sudden you can light up on fire very quickly as well too. Um, so players that I think are very much overachieving, and I hope they keep overachieving because if they do, holy smokes, he might have a 100+ point season. Martin Necas, I think he's been the MVP so far for Carolina. He's on a 12 or 13 game point streak now. He just added another assist last
Yep.
night. Um, and my goodness, he is playing some of the best hockey I've seen out of him, and it goes back to last year's playoff. I think he took a massive step in the right direction last year. I think a big piece of that was being able to play inside of the system with speed and with control.
Hmm.
Martin Necas, his game has always kind of involved the speed aspect of it, but it's really lacked in the control aspect. There are good times to use your speed and there are bad times to use it. There's good times to shift to the middle. There's good times to kind of fake the shift to the middle and go wide outside, take your speed out there. And he's just playing with a whole lot of confidence right now. And he has the ability to play with that speed. I think his hands are finally catching up to him now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think and to watch him play away, not only away from the puck, he's defensively much more responsible than he was 2 years ago. He started to get better last year, but not nearly where he is now. But to watch him control the puck in the ozone, I mean, he'll stick handle around two guys right at the blue line and come out with it on the other side, and that's a player that's playing with elite confidence and he knows it, and his speed can help him out of that scenario. So I agree. He's one guy that I think is overachieved, but we needed him to. So given his offseason, trials and tribulations when it comes to contracts, but the other guy for me that I think is overachieved a couple of guys, but I think Roslovic didn't really know what to expect out of him, given his previous handful of seasons. To be where he's at on the score sheet at the moment, it's pretty impressive. And I think he's just finally figuring out that line and the where to be's. And I think, Aho is, and somebody said it last night, at the game. I went to the game with, some buddies of mine that I used to play hockey with. And he said, Aho looks like he
Yeah.
misses Teravainen. And I think that's a very true statement. And I think he's finally going to, once Aho figures that out, and I think he's starting to, his relationship with Roslovic and Svech, and I think that line's gonna elevate. It's definitely has another level to go to. But I think he's one, and I think, obviously Martinook, I think he's overachieved. But we needed him to on that third line. We needed depth scoring, and he's factoring into that. So I think for me, those two guys have overachieved. I'm not going to throw Blake into this because, you know, he's as expected. And we're getting out of him what we expect to get out of him. You don't normally expect to get the level of performance out of, Jordan Martinook, 6 goals in 6 games. I mean, so that's just not a normal thing for him. So I think to this point of the season, those would be the 2
I
guys that I
think it's
would say.
also hard to expect anything out of a rookie. So you never kind of know
Mhm.
where they're going to be on the season and how advanced they're going to be in their game. Sometimes you get rookies like, a perfect example is like Alexei Lafreniere. He didn't come in and light the world on
Mhm.
fire. Shane Wright in Seattle's kind of in the same boat right now where they're very high picks and they don't come in and immediately set the world on fire. And then you got other guys. I mean, Jackson Blake, perfect example. Stankoven, Dallas, perfect example. These later round pick guys, they come in at a little bit of an older age. They're not coming in at 18 years old. They're coming in at 20 years old. You don't really
Yep.
know how their game's going to transition. I think Blake's game has transitioned perfectly to the NHL. And I think he's, like I said, I think he's only going to get better. Martinook, 100%. I think he was my preseason prediction on who needed to have a better year. So I'll take a little bit of credit for that one. That
Yep.
was a great call by me. I'm kidding.
Wait, I thought Cameron was
Yeah, I
on the
know,
call here.
jeez.
It's like, holy
No, but
there's a guy that toots his own horn a lot. It's just definitely Cameron. He won't tell you that, but he'll just say
yes,
some guy, some guy said
somebody
this.
said this, but I think
Yeah.
we definitely needed more out of Martinook. He's added more, he's added a bit of grit to his game, and he's kind of always had a goal scoring presence to him. I think last year he struggled a little bit in the goal scoring department, so it's good to see him back on that level. To go back to your other point, Roslovic, I think last year had 4 goals in on the entirety of the season. He's already on 9 this year, and the line hasn't even
Hmm.
started clicking yet. So now that the
Correct.
line's starting to actually go a little bit, points haven't followed them in the last 2 games per se. I mean, in comparison to what they were when they really, in my opinion, weren't playing that well together. Now that they are playing well together, they're getting a lot of chances. I think once they get the offense going again, this line's going to be one of the most dangerous lines in hockey. I think I agree. They're trying to get kind of used to each other. I think Aho
Hmm.
and Svetch have always kind of struggled playing with each other too. They haven't always had the best chemistry, and to kind of follow up with your point, 100% agree. Aho is missing Teravainen. Um, Whenever
Hmm.
Aho was struggling in the past, that was his safety valve. That was somebody we could always throw on his line, and we knew, hey, that Turbo's going to get Aho going. They had some sixth sense connection. They just always knew where each other were. Teravainen is one of the greatest passers I've ever seen. And I mean, I think there are aspects of Teravainen's game that probably are fading a little bit due to his age, and I think that was part of the reason why we didn't wanna sign him to such a big contract. I think Turbo's doing great things in Chicago, and, I mean, some of the goals him and Bedard are setting up are some of the crazy like, the power play looks ridiculous right now. But I
Yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Not having Turbo, that's a safety valve for Aho. That's somebody that whenever Aho wasn't playing well, throw him on Turbo's line. Let's get Aho rolling again, and then you can kind of transfer off of Turbo's line once Aho got rolling. Um, wouldn't mind seeing Svetch kind of switch maybe and go on to Natchis's line, just to see if that creates a little bit more offensive presence. However, that puts 2 really defensively lacking wingers on the same line. Don't always love that, out of a lineup.
Hmm.
Now,
So who would you move up? Who would you move up to the
I
first line?
and I know it really doesn't work with hands right now, either Jarvis or Blake, but
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'd like to see
I would
Blake with
too.
Aho.
And whether and maybe, the lines haven't been 100% confirmed, like, I don't think we're in our playoff lineup structure yet, basically. I think there's definitely gonna be a bunch of changes still to remain. I wouldn't mind seeing Roslovic maybe, and I know he's had a monster start to the year, but I
Mhm.
I think that I think that we have 2 shooters on that line because I think Svetch wants to be a shooter. He's kind of caught in 2 minds, and I think if we were to put a playmaker like Blake on the line, I think Svetch would turn into more of a shooter. And I think Roslovic is a shooter, so I'd be interested to maybe see maybe a slight switch up in the line combination. But I mean, we've been playing so well, it's hard to change anything, and I agree with Rod in
Yeah,
that.
I know it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to argue it. Yeah, at this point, but to elevate everybody's game to the next level and to make you dangerous top to
I mean,
bottom,
but
I
the
think
thing is, we're already dangerous top
you
to
know.
bottom because we don't have outside of Natchez, it's not like one guy's running away with the scoring title. Like we're
Yeah.
getting production.
Yeah. More,
Yeah,
I
we're
guess
getting
more
production from
dangerous.
top to bottom. So it really is hard to change anything, especially because I mean, we're 11 and or 12 and 4 right now. I mean, it's not like we've had a bad start to the year. We've scored in every one of our wins
Hmm.
outside of I think one, we've scored 4 more goals. Like we've had a really good start to the year in that regard. And I mean, even in one of the games we lost, the Colorado game, it was 6-4. We're scoring bunches
Yeah.
of goals. Like the pundits at the beginning of the year saying we had a scoring problem. I was probably one of them. But we don't have a scoring problem right now. It's so it's like,
Yeah.
you don't wanna
No.
change what's working. Don't wanna really mess the mojo up at all. Um, One other player I do wanna make note of, who I do really think is overachieving. I know he's quarterbacking the power play, but Shane Gostisbehere has got a ton of points already on the season. We were looking for kind of a Tony DeAngelo-esque replacement, somebody that could really carry the mail on the power play. And I think that Gostisbehere has been a perfect fit in that. I know we went through a little bit of a cold stretch there, but we're still probably, I think, in the top 15 for our power play percentage right now. It's still clicking. We've scored 3 goals in the past 2 games on the power play. So we did score in Seattle on the power play as well, too. It's getting going again, and hopefully it stays going. But I think the biggest ad that we made in the offseason for that was Shane Gostisbehere. I mean,
Yep.
he's the one that leads the
Yeah. No,
charge on that
I agree.
regard.
Yeah, and I agree, and I've been high on him all year. I think I keep telling everybody, and maybe I'll eat my words, but that he's probably going to be one of the most significant offseason pickups that we have, and we're going to see it as we
Yep.
get deeper into the season. So, but he definitely he brings that confidence to the power play. And we saw when the power play got a little stagnant, they weren't moving. Wasn't there much movement. Puck movement was a little bit slower in the handful of games prior to last night, and last night they just seemed to pick it up. And the second power play unit too. I mean, they put Burnsy in front of the net,
Burnsy net
which
front, Burnsy
we
net
said
front, Burnsy net front.
we've said since day one that's where his rear end needs to
I'm
be, is right
honestly
in front
not
of the net.
liking it
And
though.
uh, it isn't, because
No,
I don't think they figured it out yet. I think they're still trying to figure. I don't know that they have that quarterback yet
no, I
to run the
I disagree
top of the
with you
key.
100. I think Sean
Um,
Walker is that quarterback. I think the issue is we don't have we don't have a distribution threat on that line. Kotkaniemi's not the best passer. Jack Roslovic's not the best passer. Drury's not the best passer. Burns is stiffer than a board. Like it's outside of. I mean, I think once
yeah.
we get Jarvis back, if Blake does end up moving back to that second power play unit, I think that adds a massive level of competency in just the
Hmm.
playmaking department. Because I think right now we have 2 very similar players in Drury and Kotkaniemi playing on that line. We have Burns, who I agree, I think net front might end up being a great move. Right now, it hasn't worked out 100% yet. I think Roslovic just needs to be a shooter. I think Walker needs somebody that he can kind of run around with a little bit. And I think,
Hmm.
who you move off that line, it probably would end up being Burns once, I guess, Jarvis does come back. Or I think that Kotkaniemi's game this year has warranted him playing power play. I really think, though, it's warranted him getting more PK time. Is that just me? I think his defensive
Hmm.
game this year has been superb. I think he's probably earned more
Yeah,
PK
no,
time.
yeah, I think he has too, and I think he's getting more. I think and last night I think they took a look at some different looks too on the penalty kill as well. Um, adding guys in there that I don't normally see on the penalty kill, and you have that luxury when you're up by a handful of goals. So
Guys.
it was a late power play, but it was good to see I think they put Blake and somebody else out there on the PK. They don't normally go out there on the PK. So getting them a little bit of experience, I think it's good, because you're going to need that depth going forward. Like hell, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, you would not have thought of putting guys like Aho and Teravainen on the penalty kill. I mean, back in the day, you
Yeah,
wouldn't play your top
they
guys
those
because
2 guys were actually the ones that it was those 2 and, they put Marchand and Bergeron on the power or PK as well too. It was those 2 sets
yeah,
that started in, like, it was when Carolina's first started making the playoffs again. It was those two guys that really revolutionized that. Now every team
Hmm.
seems to throw two of their top scorers out.
They're
Yeah.
doing it. Everybody's doing it. Yeah, everybody's doing it, and
Yep.
it works. That's the thing. It works because those guys have skill and speed, and yeah, I mean, you got to have your when you need your best players on the ice, they need to be on the ice for
It's also
all
amazing
scenarios.
how much speed makes a
Yeah.
difference on a penalty kill. When it's a 50-50
Hmm.
puck and you can get there a lot quicker than other people, that makes a
Hmm.
huge difference. Whether you get that puck or not, you're creating
Hmm.
havoc and you're going to create a turnover somewhere. Whether it's the turnover right there, unless you're playing against Nikita Kucherov, you're going to create a turnover somewhere. That's the only
Yeah.
player in the world where I'm like,
Yeah.
on the power play, McDavid, okay, Connor McDavid as well too, maybe Nathan McKinnon. Those three guys. Yeah, you
Hmm.
could get them in a 50-50 puck battle, you're probably losing the battle, and then you're also losing the
Yeah.
passing
Oh
lane.
yeah.
Like, those 3
Oh
guys
yeah.
are just exceptional. Cale Makar probably thrown in there as
Hmm.
well too. But
Now that you bring them up, now that you bring 'em, I want to, and I don't want to talk about
oh,
other teams, obviously, but I
we're
will.
getting to that
So it's
point in
okay.
the episode anyways.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that I don't know if you when you watch a guy like Nikita Kucherov skate, he is so deceptively quick. He can go from 0 to 100 in a matter of almost seems like a nanosecond. He almost lulls you and he's like, okay, okay, then boom, I'm gone. And the guy's like,
Mhm.
okay, where did he go? And but to watch him, and he's so smooth. To watch him come down the ice, it's like it's like so fluid. Um, McDavid is quick. He's got McKinnon
Those
is
2 guys
quick.
are fast and they look
I
fast.
think
Kucherov is fast, but he looks slow.
yeah,
He reminds
he
me a
looks
lot of a
slow,
Pavel
but man,
Datsyuk in that regard.
he's
Mhm.
moving 100 miles an hour. It seems like, he's moving. You're right. He looks like he's going slow, but he's going
Aho does
exceptionally
that a lot
fast.
too.
Y- Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Maybe that's what I'm seeing. I'm just
so
seeing
I
him
I
go.
I
Look
think the
slow
big
to go
difference
fast, I
is
guess.
while
But
Connor McDavid and McKinnon are two of the fastest skaters in the world, they have very choppy and explosive foot. Or if like they're very choppy and explosive strides. So it's not a when you look at like a Kucherov and you look at like a Datsuk or you look at an Aho, their whole premise is about being a very smooth and methodical skater. And when you're
hmm.
going very smooth, you don't look like you're going as fast. Yoni Pikkinen actually was probably a really good example of this. Yoni
Yeah, that's a
Pikkinen,
great
if
example,
you're an
actually.
old Canes fan, this is a reference. He would be going a million miles an hour, but he looked like he's gliding. And it was just like he just kind of carried the puck up, and then all of a sudden you're by 3 guys and you're just barely moving around. So I think that,
Yeah,
certain guys, they're just a lot smoother of a skater, and that opens them up
yeah.
to it might not even be opening them up to,
Hmm.
they're deceptively fast. The other thing that Kucherov does, and I'm gonna keep on him because I've watched quite a few Tampa games this year, and honestly, the more I watch him play, yes, he is I don't like him. I don't think he's a very, I guess we'll call it a, love of the game player. Like, he's not going to, play the game as
Hmm.
honest as other players. In the regard of, he'll take a dive, he'll try and stab you, poke you, whatever he can kind of do to get. He's very Chuck-esque. They play the
Yep.
game away.
Yep.
It's an effective way for sure. Is it like, the have crazy respect for the game type of way? Probably not. But it's in its own different kind
Hmm.
of chaos mode. But Kucherov has probably, this might sound a little weird, probably the best hips in the NHL. There was another, I can't remember the exact game, but there was a goal. He was on the power play, and he didn't move his feet at all. His feet are stationary, but he rotates his hips towards the goal, rotates it back up to the blue line, and then rotates it back towards the goal. And it pushed both of the defenders about 2 feet backwards. He had acres of space. I was like, he didn't even move.
Yeah.
And he just pushed off both defenders. And then all of a sudden he scores it short side.
Yeah.
And I'm like he literally didn't move a muscle, but he just rotates his hips to open up to the goal like he was going to shoot, rotates his hips back like he's going to pass, he passed it down to Gensel and Gensel scores a backdoor tap in. But he rotates it back up top
Hmm.
and then just slings one back door, and everybody's stick was out of the way. Like, he's so deceptive just in his little minute movements. It's almost hard to
Yeah.
comprehend how good he is at certain things. because everybody's like, he has good stick handles. He'll walk a guy here or there. He's not beating guys with just like, it's not like McDavid where you look at him and you're like, oh my goodness, I know that was hard to do. He just toe dragged 4 guys and then went around everybody and scored.
Hmm.
Like, I know that's hard to do. What Kucherov does, he doesn't even look like it doesn't look like he's getting challenged because he's just so deceptive. And then all of a sudden he's in acres of space and he's got a wide open shooting angle. And you're like, how did that happen? He's just so deceptively
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Well, he's
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he's strong too.
he's an
So you
ox.
got to be, So I mean, the lower body strength, and I go back to a guy that used to play the same way and create time and space for himself was Jeremy Yager. He
Except
was the
Yager was
same way.
6'6"
He
and a
would.
mutant.
Well, no, he was, but
Oh,
his
I
lower
know.
body strength
Yeah.
was his biggest asset. So but yeah, no, Kucherov he's a very cerebral player. He knows what to do, when to do it, and he thinks the game
It's
like
very it's very Pavel
Gretzky-ish.
Datsyuk. Not
Yeah,
as
it's like, okay,
defensively
I think
strong as
2 or 3
Pavel
steps
Datsyuk, because
ahead.
I think Pavel Datsyuk was probably one of the
Yeah.
best defensive forwards and probably one of the best offensive forwards ever to play. Like, I think he's probably arguably one of the best Russian-born forwards ever to play. Maybe the points don't 100% go there, but you ask
Yeah. I think best two-way plaplayer,
you
I
ask
would agree.
any player that played against him in the NHL. I was listening to the Spit and Chicklets podcast, and they had Yandel and it was Yandel and Whitney, and they're like, I was scared of him when he was on the ice, not only when he had the puck, but when he didn't have the puck, because he was the best takeaway player in the NHL. And they had
Yeah.
Johan Franzen on an episode way back when, and they were talking and they're like, and Franz, I think it was Franzen. I could be wrong. I know
Well,
he
he
did.
played for
I
Detroit,
could have just
so
pulled a name off of one of those old Detroit teams and said that was who they had. It
or
was
Thomas
somebody
Holmstrom
from
or
it could have been I don't even know. It could have been Jimmy Howard for all I know. But there was somebody off of a team that played with Datsyuk, and they were saying Datsyuk every year could have had 120, 130 points if he didn't play as defensively strong as he did. But he only put up
yeah.
80, 90 points in a season because he was he was probably the best defensive forward in the NHL for multiple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was just that
Yeah.
he was that effective. But I think
Yeah, he was very much, Patrice Bergeron level of defensive,
Mhm.
offensive player, and that's pretty high praise. When you speak in that breath with those kind of caliber players, because I agree with you. He
Yeah.
was so much fun to
But he
watch.
did the same thing where he would have deceptively good speed, but he was so good at changing angles and he was so good at holding people off. That's very if Kucherov turned into a 200-foot player, he'd be a very spitting image of Pavel
Hmm.
Datsyuk. I just don't think Kucherov has that bone in his body. And I think if Datsyuk turned his game 100%
Hmm.
offensive, it would be a spitting image of Nikita Kucherov. Like, I just think those two players are very similar in that regard. Speaking of
Hmm.
Russian-born players, since we're kind of already around the league, Alexander Ovechkin is getting ever closer to breaking the all-time goal record.
Yep.
I think he does it this year. I think he's only like 38 away or something like that at this point. I think he gets it done this year. It would be another 50-goal season, I'm pretty sure, for him, which is a lot out of a 39-year-old player. But when you can score at will on the power play, then so be it.
Yeah.
I want to pose a question for you, though. Do you think Alex Ovechkin, after breaking the record, if he were to break it this year, do you think we see Alex Ovechkin next year? I think he retires as
No,
well too.
I do. I think he's done. I think that's the only reason he came back. And I think you and I have talked about this before, but I think that's the only reason he came back was to break the record and to be known as the greatest goal scorer
I
in
think he's
NHL history. I think
probably
that's the
already
only reason.
known as the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, because all due respect to Wayne
Mhm.
Gretzky, some of them goalies in the 80s couldn't stop a beach ball. I mean, some of those games were like 10-9. It was bananas. Granted, we had a game this year that was LA versus Ottawa. It was like 8-7. So I can't say it was,
Mhm.
but like a 6-5
Yeah.
game was very commonplace back then. You just had a lot more goals. But yeah, I think Ovechkin, especially doing it, well, you're talking about the hook and grab the aspect earlier. Right after that
Oh yeah.
lockout, 05, basically from 05, the 05-06 season great season. Probably one of the best seasons in NHL history, if you ask me. But from that 05-06 season until probably I would say probably 2011 to 2012, maybe 2012, 2013 season, there was a very big emphasis on defense first. I mean, we look at some of the teams that made it to the finals. Detroit, Lindstrom, they had a lineup, a back to front. They were playing defense first hockey. Pittsburgh with Letang at his peak, they had Orpik. They had a lot of really good defensemen as well too, and goals were a lot harder to come by. The fact that Ovechkin is at where he's at now in his career,
Yeah.
single-handedly, just that alone, if for some reason, and I hope this doesn't happen, some reason he's not able to actually break the record, there's like injury or something along those lines, and I still think he's
Mm-hmm.
viewed as the greatest goal scorer of all time due to the fact that he did it in the era that he did. And
Yeah. No,
and the
I
fact that he
agree.
scored, I
I
think, like
agree.
500 or something goals from the exact same spot.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think I think to tag on to that though, I agree with you that he is
Mhm.
based on how he did it, still already considered that. But I think when you get down the road 10, 15 years from now, people aren't going to know that. They're not going to know that. They're not going to understand that. They're not going to see that. They're not going to feel that. So what they're going to
Yep,
see is they're going to
I
see the
know.
record. And I think that's the, I mean, if he has that to back up, um, the, the play and the era that he did it in, I think that's really what he wants. And I think he just wants to go out with that as a, 39-year-old player and just, I think he just wants to move back or wherever he live in now. I don't know where the heck he lives now, but just enjoy his kids and not have to worry about working out in the off season and staying in good condition.
He's
And I mean, you look at some of these players, they go either way. They come out of being a pro and they stay healthy, they stay trim, they stay active, they say this, they say. Some guys, dude, they go from 0 to 100 in a matter of 10 seconds, and they become, they go from 180 pounds, 200 pounds
a
to,
beluga whale.
250, 300
Yeah.
pounds in a damn heartbeat. Because I think a lot of times some guys, they continue to eat like they're a pro, but they don't
I think
train like they're
a
a pro.
majority of players outside of Rod Brindamore, go through probably a 6-month period where they put on at least 30 or 40 pounds because your
Mm-hmm.
body is so used to eating an exorbitant amount of food. I mean, there were some games in college, we would have these, like, the little monitors on our back at times for certain games, and you burn 7, 8,000 calories in a game. I mean, and that was me not playing that many minutes. I can't imagine, playing 26 minutes in the NHL. You're probably burning a ton of calories. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
replenish that at some point, and especially with the training and everything they're doing on top of that as well too.
Yep. 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 And the conditioning that these guys are in and the health that, I mean, we're talking to George in the previous, is
Mhm.
talking about the health side of it, supplements and shakes and drinks and recovery drinks and all that stuff. I mean, back in the day, they had a damn Diet Coke and a Snickers bar. I mean,
Wayne used to eat hot
that was
dogs in the
their,
intermission.
or whatever, anything and everything. I mean, it's like, I remember they were talking about one of the longest playoff games where they went to, I don't know,
It was
5 or 6
Philly
overtimes.
versus Pittsburgh, I'm pretty sure.
And they were just ordering pizzas. They were getting anything and everything they could get to eat between periods,
Mhm.
just to have energy.
Uh, I think
And
John
but
LeClaire scored the OT winner in
the
that game.
the
I'm pretty sure it
was
was
it Philly
Philly
Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh and went to 5 overtimes, and I'm pretty sure John LeClaire scored the OT
Yeah,
winner.
no,
Who did?
no, he didn't. He didn't. I'll tell you who scored it. He used to play for us.
Did Primo?
It was Keith Primo.
Okay, then
It
the
was Keith
shot came
Primo.
from LeClaire. I know LeClaire had a portion of this. I'm gonna look it up. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it was Primo.
Longest NHL game.
So I don't know if that was the longest one or if it was the Buffalo Washington game where Pat LaFontaine scored.
Well, so
Because
it's not even on the top list anymore. We've had some long games as of late. Well, so the longest game ever played was in 1939 or 36.
Oh,
It was
wow. Well, like a cricket
116
match.
minutes or 116 minutes of overtime in a 1-0 game. Detroit versus the Montreal Maroons.
Yeah.
But like so here's the game. So it was Philadelphia at Pittsburgh in 2000, 92 minutes and 1 second. I was wrong. No. So Keith Primo did score the game-winning goal. I wonder if they'll tell me who scored the assist. Nope, they're not gonna give me that.
You know who the Pittsburgh goalie was?
Trevor Kidd.
Nope.
Ron Tugnut.
What a name
Brian
for a
Boucher
goalie.
was the other goalie. But Carolina's actually on that list. For our game in 2023, 3-2 overtime win for Florida. That one went to, I think, 4 overtimes. It got scored in the first 3 minutes of the 4th overtime, but I think it did go to 4 overtimes in that one. That was or maybe it was 3 minutes left in the 4. I don't know. I don't remember, but that was so long ago. 2023. Gosh, it's a whole.
It's like decades ago.
How do you expect me to remember all that?
God, it's 40
that was
episodes
so long ago. But anyways, we will move right along. You got anything else from inside of the league? Nope. All right.
Nope.
Cool. We will we'll grab Cam's 3 stars of the week once his internet comes back up, because of course his internet goes down on today, of course. But
yeah, if the wind blows a little bit hard,
it feels like it. Yeah, I know.
Seems like so.
His internet's like his opinion of Brett Pesci, not good. So, but anyways, I'll pass it over to you. Who are your 3 stars of the week? Now, granted, we had 2 wins, 2 losses this week, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, from our last episode on, because we recorded last Saturday.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
Yep.
go 3 to 1.
All right, let me write this down. Hold on one second. Hold on. All right, go ahead.
I think consistently, I mean, I don't think I've really given him enough props on how well he's played. I think from a defensive side, I think Jacob Slavin is my 3rd star for sure. I think he's played exceptionally well. And then I got to give the number 2 based on just performance and production. I got to give the second one. I'm going to give it to Martin.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 6 goals in 6 games, last 6 games. And then number 1, I still think you got to keep Marty Necas up there. I mean, he's just point per game, 1.5 per game. He's just elevating his game to a new level. Seems like every game. So I'm going to go with Marty as number 1. So you got Necas number 1, Martinook number 2, and Slavin number 3.
Good call on a couple of them. I might end up stealing one of them. I didn't really thought about it. So my 3rd star, I'm going to do Martinook as well too. That was the one that I'm going to steal from you, because I think he's had a really good week. Number 2, I'm going to give this guy 1st star of the week just based off of a single performance. But number 2, I'm going to give it to Marty Necas. Crazy week from him. He continues to be Carolina's best player, and I hope he continues down that road. We need him to keep going the way he's going, because if he's going, Aho gets going, Svech is going, Roslovic's going, we get Jarvis back, he gets going, Kokaniemi continues. Honestly, I think Kokaniemi's had a really good year this year. Maybe not the props he's gotten, but he's really stepped up into that second line center role. I think there's still room for improvement on the offensive front, but defensively, he's played a really strong game. My 1st star of the week, though, getting his 1st career shutout, I got to give it to him. Spenser Martin. Probably will be I hope not, but probably the only time he might make this list for me. So I do want to give him his flowers. I think Colorado game, not much you can do there. That's a tough game to go into. Kochetkov takes the next game. Kochetkov starts in Seattle. That Seattle game comes into a tough spot.
Time out. You keep saying Seattle. Is that
Utah? Jesus, I forget that Utah is a team. Sorry.
I know. I do the same thing, man.
So,
Don't feel bad.
so
Yeah.
sorry to
So
go back to the Utah game. I
mhm.
think Kochetkov. Again, I think Kochetkov struggles when he doesn't see shots early. I think that was a perfect example of that game. We came off really hot in the first,
Yeah.
really pretty good first half of the second. I think the second half of the second, where the game started shifting, he hadn't seen rubber in 45, 50 minutes, if not plus that, probably, anyways. Yeah, he hadn't seen a ton of rubber for the first hour or so in that game. And then going into about the halfway point of the game, he started seeing a lot of it. Didn't probably play the best game overall. Granted, I didn't think any of the goals were necessarily his fault. Martin gets put in, gets a really tough bounce to start it, but then kind of shut the door for the rest of the game.
Settled in. Yeah.
And then that kind of bounce back, knowing that Kochetkov's out, knowing you're the guy, and to put on the performance he put on last night, give him the first star of the week. I think it's well deserved.
Yeah. No, I can't argue. I mean, it's, small sample size, but we'll give the guy his props. I mean, he earned it. It's actually, I think, the first shutout
Yep.
as a team we've
Yep.
had all year too. So I mean, it's good on the
Yep.
group and good on
Yep.
him
Shutouts
for
are
sure.
100. Oh,
So
go ahead.
the other thing we yeah, the other thing we didn't do too is I know we mentioned guys that are overachieving. I think we'll maybe tag on. Who do you think has underachieved this year?
Ooh.
I know you said
Yeah.
you had a couple.
Um, and I know the points aren't going to back 100% my theory. I think Aho struggled this year. I think he's underachieving from where
Mhm.
he can be. I think he knows it. I think kind of the group knows it as well too. I think everybody's kind of on the same boat. He's had games where he's looked really good, but then he's had some really tough looking games where he's been invisible. With Aho, he's the type of player, if he's invisible, he's not having a good game. Some defensemen, if they're invisible, they're having a really good one. Like when Slavin's invisible, that's a
Yep.
great
Yep.
performance by Jacob Slavin. Except for when he's making
Mhm.
exceptional defensive plays. But in certain games, he looks invisible, but that's because he's not in the bad position. He's making the right plays. He's kind of doing a simple brand of hockey. So sometimes an invisible defenseman's a good thing. An invisible forward's not a good thing. Um,
Yeah. No.
I think he
Exactly.
needs to step up from where he's at. Another guy I think needs to kind of take a step forward from where he's at as well too. I know he's out right now, but I think Seth Jarvis hasn't had the best start to his season as well either. I think there's more that he can give on that front as well too. And then the final guy is uh, kind of the pairing altogether. I think has had a little bit of a tough start. That Orlov and Chatfield pair, while having
Yep.
really good plus minus numbers, I think they have struggled a little bit. I think for majority of the times that we kind of get hemmed into the D zone, if you're looking, it's
Mhm.
sometimes Spare and Walker, but I feel like a good chunk of the time it's Orlov and Chatfield. And I don't want to put it all on Orlov because I think Orlov's had some really good games and then he's had some poor games. I think Chatfield's kind
Mhm.
of in the very same boat. He's had some good games and then he's had some poor games.
Yep.
He's had some games where he's made some very soft plays that have created a lot of chances the other way, and it's a little worrisome because if we look at it from last year, that was like the last thing in his game. He's one of those players that
Yeah.
if you don't notice him, he's really good. He's having a good one because he's not an offensive
Yeah.
threat, so he's not going
Yeah.
to score a bunch. He's not going to put up crazy numbers, but he's going to be a really good shutdown defenseman, and I just think he's struggled with that from time to time this year.
Yeah. I think that he was. I mean, Orloff and Chatfield. I think that pairing was going to be my
Mhm.
underachieving. But the more I thought about it, when you go back, they were playing a 5-6
They're
role
still
last
really
year,
kind of playing a
and they're
5-6
playing
role
a
this year.
they're playing a five. Well, they're playing a three
It's
four
if
role
you look at
hybrid.
time on ice
So
between those 4 defensemen, it's pretty even through every game. So it's like
mhm.
it's like they're playing a 3 to 6 role. You know, Slavin and Burns are playing definitely more minutes than everybody else, but like from 3 to 6, you're kind of all in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they're probably getting
Mhm.
different matchups than they were used to last year. So I think, but for me, top of my list was I think Dmitry Orlov has a tough year. He's had good games. I'll agree with you there, but I think he's not played to the
Nope.
level that he played last year. So then I think he's got another level to get to or get back to. that's really going to help us defensively. But I 100% agree on Aho. I think he's been gripping the stick. His confidence is low. He's not achieved what he can achieve. And I think we're hopefully last night's, power play goal in regulation launches him forward and gets his confidence at a little different level than just shooting into an empty net. So he's going to play with a little less weight today. I think we'll make a bold prediction, but I think he's going to have a really good game today.
How good
On
are
the
we
score
talking
sheet.
here? Let's get
We're-
really bold.
I would say I'm going to go as bold as saying he's going to have a
Okay. What are
3-point
we
night.
feeling? 2 goals, 1 assist, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 assists. 2
Let's
goals,
go
1
2
assist. I
goals,
like
1
it.
assist.
I was gonna say I
Yep.
honestly could see him getting 2 in regulation. Well, I guess 3 in regulation, but 1 empty netter. I could honestly see him going to that level.
Mhm.
But we'll move the one last guy I want to make note of. I got a little message in my bottom right corner. I don't know if you got that same message, but we'll leave it alone. But the one final guy I want to say, I think he's not overachieving. I don't think he's underachieving. I think he's just achieving, but I think we could get more out of him. It's hard to kind of put this on him. I think he has more offensive game to give, but Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I think, can take a step forward still. I'm not saying he's playing poorly. I think he's playing that second line role perfectly. He's allowing Natchez to play offense. Robinson's been a good fit on that line. I still think there probably could be a little bit more offensive firepower on that line, but I digress. I think Kotkaniemi could take just another step forward in the offensive department to really complement that defensive game that he's brought in this year. He's significantly stronger than he was last year. You could see it all over the ice.
Yep.
I think he's just still lacking a little bit of that offensive confidence. There's a couple opportunities where I think he could take a quicker shot or maybe cut to the net or do something along those lines that he's still a little bit hesitant to do. And he still does a couple of those blue line turnovers that I don't want to see. But it's less. He's playing a stronger defensive game. I think he just has to take another step forward in the offensive department, and then we're going to see a different level of Jesperi's game.
Yeah, no, I 1,000,000% agree with you. I think where his game is elevated this year has been in the D zone. I think he's much, much better. He was good last year, but I think he's much, much better in
And the
D
face-off
zone
circle.
at this point in the season. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a guy that once he can figure that out, but at the same time, when you have Marty Natchez on the line, you just have to make sure that you give him the opportunity to handle the puck and give him that opportunity. So you create that time and space. So we may not get the production out of Kotkaniemi offensively, but if he's creating the opportunities and if that line's producing offensively, I don't give a shit if he scores a goal the rest of the year. As long as they're producing, and giving, Natchez that room and space. I do think Robinson is a good complement for that line. I think he's one of those, he plays with a little bit of grit. He gets in the game. He is. He's a. I don't know if he's a better version of Martin.
I think
they're
they're
the same version. Of
I think they're
they're
spitting
about the
images
same
of each
player.
other. I think Robinson is just 2 inches taller.
Yeah, and he's a little bit younger, so he's got a little bit more speed to his game. But quite honestly, Martin,
I mean, to be fair, Martin's 32 and
ice,
Robinson's 29, so it's not that
they're
far
not that
apart.
far apart. I didn't realize they were that close.
No, Robinson's been around for a while.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, fair
But
enough.
I do agree.
So,
I think that the compliment very much it adds a flavor to it. It doesn't force Kotkaniemi to be the grit grind guy that he has had to be in the past. I still think Svetch and Natchez have a lot of chemistry that probably hasn't gone noticed yet because they're not playing 100% with each other. But also we're trying to get Aho and Svetch going together because I think that if those two were to somehow get going, that would be a good combo. And I think they're getting there. So, all right. Well, that is where we will leave it. If you did get this far into the episode, please like and subscribe. We always appreciate those, and it shows us some support on our end. But we'll see you guys next week for another episode, and hopefully we'll have the full cast of Misfits back together. So we will see you guys next week.